Welcome back. Today we're going to take a look at factoring quadratic expressions again, only this time when the leading coefficient is not 1. In other words, we're going to have a number here in the front. But let's do a quick review. The FOIL method here, remember we're going to multiply the first, outside, inside, and last. When we do, we get these four terms, x squared plus 12x plus 3x plus 36. The two middle terms combine, and we get x squared plus 15x plus 36. Noticing the pattern here, when your first coefficient is 1, and those get distributed with this one here and this one here, our two middle terms have the same coefficients as the 3 and the 12. So the 3 and the 12 multiply to give us 36, add to the 15. So when we factor with a leading coefficient of 1, we're going to use that pattern. We're going to find factors of 36, and we're going to look for the pair that add to 15, and we'll use the 3 and the 12. Today, we're going to take a look at the FOIL method and factoring when your first coefficient is not 1. So when we multiply the firsts here, we get a 2x squared, and now that 2 is going to get multiplied by the 12 and give us a 24x. And then distribute the 3, we get a 3x and a 36. The two middle terms still combine, and we'll end up with 2x squared plus 27x plus 36. But notice, there are no factors of 36 that add to the 27. So we have to use a different method when we have a coefficient other than 1 that's going to get multiplied in. So when we have a leading coefficient other than 1, there are many different ways of factoring them, and teachers do different stuff. They use boxes, they take out a GCF, put one in. But I've picked the two probably most common methods. So we can use either the trial and error, which is kind of what it sounds like. Try it, doesn't work, try something else. Or what I call the multiply, split, and group method, affectionately known as MSG. So let's first take a look at trial and error. 2x squared plus 19x plus 24. Notice that there's no GCF among all three. We want to find the two binomials that work. So let's recall the pattern of the FOIL. The first terms in the two binomials will multiply to give us the first term here, the 2x squared. So our only choice is going to be 2x and x. Also, the last terms multiply to give us the last term. So these two terms here are going to multiply to give us the 24. Here are all of our choices. Notice none of them add up to the 19. So we need to use the fact that the outside and inside should add to the middle. Now, here are a couple of hints so we don't have to try all four pairs and all of them in different orders. The first thing is, for us, this 1 and 24 is going to be too big because the outside and inside have to add up to 19, and you've already got a 24. So we can mark out the 1 and 24. The second hint is if the original does not have a GCF, neither will the factors. So since our original did not have a GCF, this first factor here cannot have an even number in it because then it would have a GCF of a 2. So that's going to take out the 2 and 12 and the 4 and 6 because both of those are even. The only pairing we have left is the 3 and the 8. Now, again, we're not sure which order except for the fact that the 8 is also even. So we cannot put the 8 in with the 2. We have to put in the 3 and then the 8. If for some reason you have some other pairs, other factor pairs that didn't get excluded with these hints, try them out. For example, here we want to check it. The inside multiplies to give us 3x. The outside multiplies to give us 16x, and they do in fact add up to 19x, so they work. If they didn't work, you erase them, either try them in a different order or try a different pair. Hence the name trial and error. Now, the second method, the multiply, split, and group, or MSG, I kind of made up that name because it sort of describes the steps of what you do. Some books call it the AC method or the multiply method, or you may be using a diamond method, but they're all the same thing, just so you know. But I call it the multiply, split, and group because it's easier to remember. So we're going to use the same example. Now let's look at the multiply step. We're going to multiply the first and the last numbers, in this case the 2 and 24. A big hint from me to you, first of all, I want you to tap the 2 and 24. This is called muscle memory. If you get nervous on the test, sometimes your muscles will remember what to do before your brain actually accesses it. Kind of like when you're walking home or driving home, you get to your front door and you're like, I don't even remember getting here. It's because you've done it so often, your body automatically knows what to do. Same thing, okay? Muscle memory. Then I want you to physically write down 2 times 24. That's a visual, noticing the 2 numbers you use are the 2 numbers on the outside, and then say it out loud to yourself. 2 and 24 equals 48, gives you an auditory. So the more senses you use doing your homework, the more you're able to access the information when you're nervous, say when you're taking a test. A little tip from your Aunt Lainey. Okay, so now let's find factors of 48. Listed them all here, that add to the middle, to the 19. The 3 and the 16 work. Now, we're not going to plug them directly into the binomial. We're going to use them in a different way, and that's where the split part comes. We're going to use the 3 and 16 to rewrite the middle term as 2 like terms. In other words, we're going to keep the 2x squared, we're going to keep the 24, and we're going to split the 19 using the 3 and 16. 3x plus 16x. So we haven't changed the value of anything here. But how many terms do we have? 4. Excellent. So that's where the grouping comes in. We have 4 terms, so now we're going to factor using grouping. So let's go ahead and split down the middle. We're going to factor out a GCF of x from the first 2. We're going to factor out a GCF of a positive 8 from the second 2. Notice our 2 binomials are alike, the 2x plus 3. So let's factor out the 2x plus 3, and that leaves us with the x plus 8. Yay! So trial and error is awesome and it's fast, but sometimes when you get stuck, it's nice to have this method in your back pocket as well. So here are 3 that I want you guys to try. Go ahead and pause the video when you're ready. And if you've got the time and the space, try both methods. Try the trial and error and try the multiply, split, and group. They're both valid methods. Sometimes the trial and error is faster, but it's nice to have both in your back pocket. So try them out, and when you're done, ready to see how you did, go ahead and hit play. Okay, let's see how you did. We've got a quadratic equation. Our front runner is not 1, we have a 4. And also there is no GCF. So we can use the trial and error method or multiply, split, and group. So for the next 3, let's practice the multiply, split, and group since there's more steps to it. We're going to multiply the 4 times the negative 6, those outside numbers. That gives us a negative 24. Factors of a negative 24, negative 1 times 24, negative 2 times 12, negative 3 times 8, negative 4 times 6. So we've done the multiply. Now we need to split by finding the 2 factors that add to a positive 5. Negative 3 and 8 work. They add to 5, and we don't have to switch the signs. So we're going to keep the 4, y squared. We're going to keep the negative 6, but we are going to split that 5y into 2 like terms using the negative 3 and the positive 8. Now we've done the multiply and the split, it's time to group now that we have 4 terms. So we're going to split it down the middle, take out a GCF from the first 2, which is a y, leaving us with 4y minus 3. The second 2 has a GCF of a positive 2, again leaving us with 4y minus 3. Our 2 binomials are alike, therefore we're going to factor it out, the 4y minus 3, leaving us with the y and the plus 2 for our other binomial factor. Now, if you use trial and error here, that's great. Odds are you probably started with a 2y times a 2y, but notice they were both even, so there were a lot of these choices that you could mark out because they were all even and you didn't have a GCF, leaving you with 3 and 8, but then when you tried it, you would notice the 3 and 8 do not work either. And then you'd have to have gone to the 4y times y. Let's take a look at B. We have 20x squared minus 17x plus 3. There is no GCF. Using the multiply, split, and group, we would multiply 20 times a positive 3, which gives us a positive 60. But it adds to a negative 17. So to multiply to give us a positive, but add to give us a negative, we would have 2 negative factors. So let's see, negative 1 times a negative 60. negative 2 times a negative 30, negative 3 times a negative 20, negative 4 times a negative 15, negative 5 times negative 12. I'm spreading out here a little bit. Negative 6 times negative 10. 7 does not divide in. 8 does not divide in. 9 does not divide in. And then we would repeat. So the pair that would add to a negative 17 would be negative 5 times negative 12. So again, we're going to keep the first term, the 20x squared. We're going to keep the last term of a positive 3. We're going to split that middle term using these as coefficients, the negative 5x and the negative 12x. Now that we have 4 terms, we do our grouping. We're going to split it down the middle. First 2 has a GCF of 5x, leaving us with 4x minus 1. Second 2 have a negative 3 in common, leaving us with a 4x minus 1. Double check your signs. Then they had a 4x minus 1 in common, leaving us with a 5x minus 3 as our second binomial. Last but not least, number 9, we do have a trinomial. Our front runner is 1. However, we do have a GCF. There is a 3 in common. So if we factor out a 3, that would leave us with a 3x squared plus 14x plus 8. Now, for some of you, the GCF of 3 here out to the side might get a little confusing. So I do allow my students to bring down a little arrow, write down their 3, and go ahead and put in the 2 binomials that we'll be looking for. That way they don't forget it when they get to their answer at the very end, but it's not in their way while they're factoring. Because remember, every line should be equal to the one above it, so technically that 3 should be carried down all the time. But if it visually gets in your way, ask your teacher if you can, make some sort of notation that it carries throughout, but then just put it down at the end so you don't forget it. So now we're going to multiply this 3 and this 8 for our multiply, split, and group, and we get a negative, and we get a 24. Factors are 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, and a 4 times 6. Factors that add to 14, this time we got 2 and 12. So we're going to keep the 3x squared, we're going to keep the plus 8, and then we're going to split the 14x using the 2x and the 12 with an x. Now that we have 4 terms, we can split the middle and group. And we've got an x as our GCF for the first 2, leaving us with a 3x plus 2. And the second group, we have a 4 in common, leaving us with a 3x plus 2. So we have a 3x plus 2 in common. We can factor that out, leaving us also with an x plus 4. And there's our result. So how did you do? Good, I hope. If you made a couple of errors, that's fine. Find out what you did wrong, correct it, and then you know kind of what mistakes to look for in the future, especially on your test, okay? So to remember a few things about factoring, once you have your polynomial in descending powers, look for a GCF. It may or may not have one, but you need to look first. Then count the terms. If you have 4 terms, that means you can use grouping. 3 terms, if you don't have a coefficient other than 1, or if you do have a coefficient of 1, you can use the trial and error or the multiply, split, and group method, affectionately known as the MSG. So hopefully you didn't find factoring too painful. This is a sticking point for a lot of students. So don't feel like you should have it mastered as quickly as you did some of the earlier material in your class. It's going to take some time, especially if you're not as quick on your multiplication facts. Just know that ahead of time. This is going to take you a little bit longer, but that's okay. All right? So if you have any questions, you can watch the video again, look for other videos, ask your teacher, ask your tutor, ask your friends, but ask somebody. Get some help. Don't wait until the day before the test to go, I didn't get this. It's too late by then. As soon as you're stuck, get help. Don't let your pride keep you from passing. Enjoy yourself, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.